All right, so we are joined by my friend Lilli Evans Bass, co-founder and co-owner of BBJ Brown Bass and Jeter Law Firm here in Jackson. We thank you so much for joining us today. This is our business law class at Velma Jackson High School. I've got a room full here with me, and we're recording this for all of our friends in Madison County Schools, Madison Central, Ridgeland High School, Germantown High School, the Academic Options Center, and our YouTube channel. So thank you so much for fitting us in your tight schedule today.
Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Now, before we get into all you do, because obviously I think attorney is one of the most misunderstood careers on the planet. You went to St. Joseph High School, where you were the valedictorian, and then went to Tougaloo, great HBCU, and then went to Mississippi University of Mississippi Law School. So just take us through your HBCU experience and then your law school experience, because Tougaloo is a great college, and we really want to let everybody know what they have going on. And then Ole Miss is just such a great law school and other great grad programs there. So just tell us about that experience.
Certainly. Tougaloo is a great HBCU, not only for individuals thinking about going to law school, but medical school, dental school, or just to get a great college degree. I think the great thing for me there was they knew what my goal was, knew I intended to go to law school, and did everything in their power to help me get there and help me get there as quickly as I possibly could. I was a political science major, which is a great major for someone considering law school, but really you can go to law school with any college degree, whether it's a biology degree, an English degree, art, music, you name it. There are no restrictions on what you major in for getting into law school. But I do think if it's something that's going to make sure you have a good foundation in writing and critical thinking and analysis, then that will be what will most prepare you for law school. But Tiglu was a wonderful experience. The professors were great. Being in that environment culturally and being around all other students, mostly that looked like me, came from a wide array of backgrounds. So just because the majority of the students are Black, it doesn't mean that everyone has the same background. There were students
There you
from
go.
all over the country, lots of economic diversity, lots of just background diversity, which I think is very important to realize that an HBCU has that as well. And from there, Ole Miss Law School, which is wonderful. Of course, I practiced with two other Black females. We all went to Ole Miss Law School, though.
Oh, cool.
We actually met there. My two law partners were 2 years ahead of me in law school, but it was a great experience. Now, I tell everybody, law school does not prepare you to practice law. Law school teaches you how to research and learn the law so that you can be an effective lawyer when you practice law. And I think Ole Miss did that. I mean, it made sure that, I had the knowledge, I had the information I needed to pass the bar exam, which of course is required to practice law in Mississippi and most states, and then to be able to be successful in practice.
Yeah, and that's what I want to talk about next, because everybody watches the courtroom dramas. Everybody watches Law and Order. I was a big fan of the show All Rise. And yeah, that is a small part of what goes on in the legal world, but that is such a very, very minuscule area of law, because you guys do not deal, as far as I know, with any criminal law. Just because you're talking to an attorney doesn't mean you're going to jail. There are things that you need to see an attorney for that are everyday things that people need to be aware of, and that's what we kind of talk about in this class: is knowing your rights as an employer, knowing your rights as an employee, knowing things that you are, knowing what you're legally uh, have a right to in any type of contract situation. If you want to buy a house, buy a business, you're going to have to deal with an attorney. If you want to have a prenuptial agreement in a marriage, you got to deal with an attorney. So, I know you guys don't do the whole criminal thing we see on TV. So, just talk about the big differences in that and kind of the things that you guys focus on in your practice.
Yes, we do very, very little criminal law. Almost everything we do is considered civil, and it runs the full range of civil. We do family law, which is going to be your divorces, your child custody, child support, um, wills, which is very important that people kind of have an estate plan for after they pass away and where their assets are going to go. we also do employment law. And oddly, unlike most firms, we do employment law on both sides of the spectrum, both for employers and employees. But the majority of our practice is for employees. And most of that is wrongful termination claims stemming from discrimination, where people were terminated solely because of their race, their gender, or a disability. And we do a lot of that. But I also do go in on the other side and educate employers and make sure, especially small businesses, that they have a good human resources manual or employee manual and on, non-discrimination and how to treat employees in the workplace, how to comply with the various government regulations that affect their business, which is based off the number of employees usually that they have and the industry that they're in. And then jumping a whole nother spectrum, I also represent government entities. And I represent them in just the day-to-day administration of the government, but also with respect to employment and human resource type matters. And then, of course, we do things such as business setup. We help small businesses actually become created. We help them get established, help them get the necessary paperwork they need for their financial matters,
Yep.
as well as the contracts they need, the name designations, the type of corporation they're going to be. So kind of the full gamut of that. And we also do civil rights law, which most people think they know what that is, but maybe not. Most of the clients that we represent in civil rights cases are either currently in prison and have had their rights violated or have been injured while they're in prison, or they've actually been killed. They have died in prison and we represent their family back against the prison because their rights were violated while they were incarcerated.
Well, and that's a rabbit hole we could go down all day long about the prison reform and prison system, but we don't have time today. But that's something we definitely need to get into another time. Now, I think that's interesting because even if we have kids not interested in the legal field, we have kids all the time that say they want to be entrepreneurs, want to be small business owners, and even though you're an attorney, you're also a small business owner. So I think that's a cool combo. But I hear people say all the time, "Well, I don't want to spend money on an attorney to do something I could do on my own." And then they wind up with several $1,000s worth of fines and penalties. So, what are some things that, especially here in Mississippi, people need to pay attention to legally when it comes to opening a business?
Well, I think you need to first pay attention to the type of business you're setting up, and making sure it complies with the laws where you're setting it up. Time and time again, I have people call me because they've bought a building or they've leased a building, but they actually can't operate the type of business they intended to in that building because it
Man,
does not
wow.
comply with the city's ordinances. So
Wow.
that's the first thing. And that's one reason to get an attorney is that somebody is checking on that for you. Also, an attorney is going to make sure you set up the right type of corporation for your business. An LLC may not be what everyone needs. And then there's certain designations, even within an LLC. Some businesses, for financial reasons, need to be an S corp. And a lawyer can help guide you through that process. They can also make sure you have all the contracts you need when you open in a business. So many times, two or three people come together, but they don't actually have a signed operating agreement between the business partners. So when the business fails, or if something goes wrong and one person wants to pull out, they are going to be entangled in a legal dispute, or possibly somebody could be left with nothing. And so you want all of the paperwork done on the front end. You want an operating agreement. You want contracts, legally binding agreements with your business partners and with everybody you're doing business with. No matter how small, I can't stress enough the importance of having written agreements for every aspect of a business when you open it, because unfortunately, so many of them do fall apart, or one or two partners wants to pull out, and it saves thousands of dollars and months of legal battles if we have done all of that on the front end. And honestly, it's a whole lot cheaper.
Oh, tell me about it. Yeah, you're probably going to, I mean, you're definitely going to spend a little money up front, but it's just not worth the headache and the money you're going to save later. Because look, our grandparents could, back in the day, they had said, well, a handshake is all I need. Well, that's not enforceable in court. A handshake is not a legally binding agreement. So, yes, no matter what business you get into as an entrepreneur, the contracts are what is enforceable. So I'm so glad that you said that because that is so important. Now, another thing is you're also an entrepreneur yourself because I think it's pretty cool. You guys not only represent entrepreneurs, you are also entrepreneurs of great black-owned business here in Jackson. You guys got the billboards. I'm sure people have seen around. So people can be a great attorney, but that doesn't mean they're going to be a great business owner because obviously you guys know the law, but you guys have to manage employees. You have to manage the things that have come with running a business. So, what are some things? Obviously, you were trained to be a great attorney at Ole Miss Law School. What have you had to learn to be a great business owner since you became a business owner?
Well, I think the first thing you have to learn once you get past all the setup is the financial aspect of running a business and how to manage your money. So budgeting and monthly financial reports and really making sure you stick to that budget and you have a financial plan. I think it's the first key to success and oddly the one most often overlooked from helping other people with businesses and even new law firms. But you also need a marketing plan. You need to know what your marketing and advertising budget is going to be, and then you need a plan because you don't just want to randomly pay for ads all over or not have a strategic way of spending that money, whatever that advertising budget is. It needs to be targeting the individuals that you believe will most benefit from your business and most use it. And it needs to be catering to the demographic that you believe is going to be most receptive of whatever your business is. And then the other aspect is learning to manage and interact with employees. And that's easier said than done. I mean, you have to adjust to different personalities, different ways of work. You're going to unfortunately have to learn how to hire and fire and go through the process of hiring and then go through the process of terminating the employee and what could come after that, whether it's claims for unemployment or lawsuits or whatever the case may be. So I just think the main things that you have to learn and adjust to are how to manage your employees, how to manage your money, and then who are you targeting and how are you going to get the word to them that you exist as a business and what you can do to help them.
Absolutely. Now, something else I really wanted to hit on, and I talk about this a lot because a lot of young people are not informed. I always say when you're an employee, you need to know your rights. Now, every state's different, so if you move somewhere else, it could be a little different. But some things are federal laws that have to be upheld, and it's important that kids know when they start working, you have a right to certain things. So, yeah, I always tell these young ladies when you have a child, don't let somebody tell you can't have maternity leave. Don't let somebody not pay you overtime when you're working over 40 hours a week on an hourly rate. Read your paycheck. Know if you get injured, you have certain rights. So, as these kids, some of them already have jobs, but as they start working and they get out of high school and start working full-time jobs, what are some of the basic rights as employees that they need to be aware of that you see people maybe not know they have all the time?
Certainly. One thing, in Mississippi, employers especially stress that we're an at-will employment state, meaning essentially that you can be terminated at any time for any reason. But what I remind people all the time, that doesn't mean you can be discriminated against. They don't, no employer has a right to treat you differently because you're a female, treat you differently because you're a male on the basis of your race. If you have a disability that requires some accommodation that they can reasonably accommodate, they have the requirement by law to do that. And they also can't discriminate against you on the basis of that disability. So pay attention to what is going on in the workplace. If you are being sexually harassed, that is obviously not prohibited in the workplace. If you are being targeted, if racial slurs are being thrown out, if you see that all men are being granted vacation leave whenever they request it, but you're not as a female, Start making a paper trail. Document, document, document everything when you get into the workforce. Anything that you think is a violation of your rights, make sure you're sending that in writing to your supervisor and your HR department. Even if you're in a small business, just send it to your supervisor. But have a paper trail of whatever activities are going on that you think are violating some right that you have. Also, like you said, check your paycheck. If you are working overtime in a position where you are being paid by the hour and you're not exempt from overtime in that position, make sure you're getting your time and a half for the hours you are working over 40 hours. And if you're not, report it. There's the fair wage and labor laws that dictate how employees are paid. And if you honestly just Google it, you can figure out how to get help if you're not being paid correctly. Also, look for safety in the workplace, especially if you're working in an industrial environment, manufacturing plant. If you think your environment is not safe and you are being put in danger, there are also protections for that. There are OSHA protections to make sure that you are safe in the environment. And there are attorneys on all of these areas all throughout the state that will also come in and help. And a lot of people don't reach out to attorneys with employment issues because they think they have to pay up front. And while there are, and I would say maybe even the majority of employment attorneys in Mississippi require money up front, there are firms like ours where we take those cases on a contingency fee basis, meaning we don't recover unless we recover for you. So there are those attorneys that you can find that are not going to take any money from you out of pocket up front to help you pursue a claim back against an employer.
Absolutely. And then also, if you're ever injured, a lot of people say, I got hurt, but I'm scared to say something. If you're injured on the job, every single person, as long as you're legally employed, is entitled to unemployment insurance. So those unemployment claims, those companies are paying that unemployment insurance for that very reason. So being discriminated against because you got injured, that's also one that unfortunately is too common. And then one I had experience with. And I'm glad you said reasonable accommodation because that's the key word. I was working at a restaurant and we had a person start working there that was a Pentecostal. And she was told she could not wear her skirt at work because it violated dress code. And you may be familiar with that case. I know it made the news. And she sued and won. And honestly, I don't think she got enough. I think she should have sued for more, but that's just me. But that was a blatant, perfect example of of reasonable accommodation. Now, if somebody's in a wheelchair and the doors aren't wide enough, that's one thing. But if you have a certain religion and you have a certain headdress or a certain way you wear your clothes, that has to be accommodated to by federal law.
Correct. Yes. You also have protections for your religious beliefs, especially if that alters, what you need to wear to work, what you're required to wear based off your religious beliefs. But it's important to always report injuries on the job. Because it may be that you need to file a workers' compensation claim. And there are also attorneys to help you with that. But you do not want to bypass your workers' compensation benefits if you were injured while you were working and they are able or required to pay for your medical bills, your medical treatment, and even weekly wages for the weeks you're unable to work. And then you may need to switch from that, or at the same time also be drawing short-term disability and then maybe even eventually long-term disability. So just always remember, don't be scared to report it. If you don't report it, the employer has no way of knowing. The employer can always then just deny the claim or deny knowledge. And you don't want to get in that situation. That's why I say with everything document, whether it's a minor injury, a major injury, report it to the employer so they're aware. Too often we see someone think they have a very minor workplace injury, and 6 months later, it becomes a major injury. And the employer is going to deny that claim because it was never reported. It is
There you
very
go.
difficult to go 6 months later and try to make someone um, be responsible for an injury that you failed to report. So make
Oh,
sure
I'm with you.
everything's reported.
I'm with you. If somebody told me 6 months later they were hurt, I wouldn't believe them either. So it really is all about because and the funny thing is, usually if somebody's injured, most of the time there's going to be surveillance footage because of all these security cameras around. So it's if you said, look, here's where I fell, look, that's on tape. But a lot of these places aren't going to have surveillance footage from that far back. So that is a very good point. especially, a lot of these kids are going to be working in restaurants. If you get hurt, you need to tell somebody. It's perfectly okay. These companies pay that unemployment insurance, so we don't need somebody having a long-term health issue because they didn't report it at work. That is so important, and I'm glad everybody knows that. Now, I got some questions from the students. I'll get to as many of these as I can. I
Okay.
like this first one. This is LaCridrick Harris. He's in ninth grade, and he asked, "What is some advice you would give me if I wanted to open my own business?"
To do your research, first, make sure you have researched the business you want to go into. Make sure, it's a viable business for the market in which you want to put it in, meaning sometimes I see someone open a business and they're already 20 right there around it. Well, what's going to be different about your business if you still want to open the same business? Make sure you're financially ready to open the business. Either you have research what types of grants and loans you can get, or you have saved some money, some capital to be able to go into the business. And importantly, don't be afraid to reach out to other people. You know, there are oftentimes other people that may be more experienced or have more money saved, more capital that would be willing to go in and invest into that business with you and make it become a reality a lot sooner. So, but the main thing with any business is just research, research, research on the front end. Research your location, research where you're going to put it, research that business, and make sure you have all the knowledge you need to be successful.
Big time. I like this one, and I think this needs to be asked as well for people interested in being an attorney. This is Rondell Ellis, one of our archery studs here. He's in 10th grade,
Wow.
and a lot of people say I want to be an attorney because I want to make a lot of money. But he asked, "What are the pros and cons of being an attorney?"
Well, the pro for me is that I get to help a lot of people. Um,
Yeah.
every day I get to help someone almost in some aspect of their life, whether it's a family matter, a business matter, or whatever the case may be. But one of the cons is, I'm never off work. I tell people I work 24/7, 365, every day of the year, all the time, because if an emergency arises with the client, I've got to deal with it. Um, and that happens more often than you would think, So when you're in the legal profession, it's not, even if you have an 8 to 5 job at a law firm, it's not necessarily really 8 to 5 with the type of law that I practice because your clients are going to have needs all the time and they expect you to answer and be responsive. So I think that's probably the biggest con is that it's not something I just get to walk away from. Not to mention, my clients' problems become my problems. And if you don't have
Yeah.
that empathy, you're not going to be a successful attorney. So, I live it, I sleep with it, it's there all the time. And I think, that definitely isn't for everyone.
Yeah. I like this one. This is Zayden Reed. She's in ninth grade, and she asked, "What's the hardest thing you've had to deal with as an attorney?"
Oh, wow. The hardest thing for me are matters involving children, and family matters because in the end, nobody wins. And I tell every client that when you are dealing with divorces, child custody, modifications of child custody, you're affecting somebody's life one way or another. Either a child is going to end up unhappy, a parent is going to end up unhappy. And so those are always the hardest matters. It's a little different when you're dealing with businesses, but families, you're affecting somebody's everyday life.
I got time for two more. This is Levon Johnson. He's in 10th grade, and he asked, "How much documentation is usually needed to have a case against an employer?"
Oh, wow. It really depends on the type of case, but with the standard, you need a lot. One offhanded comment or, that may be a racial slur is not going to be enough to show any type of pattern or of misconduct or that the conduct was so egregious that it basically altered your working conditions. So the the more the better. If you have documented over several months of ongoing behavior, then you really are going to have a much stronger case than if you've only documented one or two incidents over a couple week period.
Yeah. All right, I got one more. This is Edward Flowers. He's in 10th grade, one of our band members here. And he asked, "What's the most common type of discrimination you see as an attorney?"
Racial discrimination, is what I see most often. Unfortunately, you know, we we have some ways to go with progress, as we probably are all aware. But we have lots of patterns that I see in certain businesses of derogatory comments that are motivated by race, as well as failing to promote, failing to hire, failing to pay the same wages um, for blacks, especially unfortunately black women.
Yeah, and I agree. You know, we have come a long way, but there's still so much work to be done. Now, we're almost out of time, and we thank you so much for taking some time for us. But a couple things before we go. BBJlawyers.com is y'all's website. Very well done, very professional website. All y'all's information is on there if anybody has any questions or issues. And you guys have got billboards up all over town. You guys look great on those, so that's really cool. Now, the last thing before we go, you know, like we said, a lot of times people are scared. Yeah, I don't want to deal with an attorney. I want to handle this on my own. Why is it important to understand that great firms like yourself are really here to help the community and here to help injustices that are happening in our area every day?
Yeah. Our motivation for everything we do is how we can help the community, how we can put, especially people that look like us, in a better position. So don't be afraid to reach out. I mean, attorneys are not here to hurt you, they're here to help you. Um, Me personally, I'll help you in any way I can. Again, you have my website, you have my information. If I can help you, if I can help a family member, if I can help you with a law school application, a college application, whatever it is, shoot me an email anytime, call my office. I am more than happy to help. And I think everyone in my offices and the majority of attorneys are here to help you, whether it's a car wreck, a criminal charge, a family matter. We'll figure out a way to get you through it, or get you to the person that can get you through it.
That's awesome. Well, again, we thank you so much for joining us. Please give EJ my best. I really miss seeing him
I
around.
will.
But Lilli Evans Bass, co-founder, co-owner, attorney at BBJ Lawyers right here in Jackson. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
I talk to you soon, buddy.
Bye bye.